Hello, hello. This is Study Coach UK on YouTube, and my name is Morel Benard, continuing with the story about the life of David Copperfield. And so, last words were that all the rest of that day, and from morning to night afterwards, she sat at that desk, scratching composedly with a hard pen, speaking in the same imperturbable whisper to everybody, never relaxing a muscle of her face or softening a tone of her voice, or appearing with an atom of her dress astray. I continue. And by the way, before I do, please subscribe to Study Coach UK channel. Please subscribe and please share. Thank you. Her brother took a book sometimes, but never read it that I saw. He would open it and look at it as if he were reading, but would remain for a whole hour without turning the leaf, and then put it down and walk to and fro in the room. I used to sit with folded hands watching him and counting his footsteps hour after hour. He very seldom spoke to her, and never to me. He seemed to be the only restless thing except the clocks and the whole motionless house. In these days before the funeral, I saw but little of Peggoty, except that in passing up or down the stairs, I always found her close to the room where my mother and her baby lay. And except that she came to me every night and sat by my bed's head while I went to sleep. A day or two before the burial, I think it was a day or two before, but I'm conscious of my confusion in my mind about that heavy time, with nothing to mark its progress. But she took me into the room. I only recollect that underneath some white covering on the bed, with a beautiful cleanliness and freshness all round it, there seemed to me to lie embodied the solemn stillness that was in the house, and that when she would have turned the cover gently back, I cried, "Oh no, no," and held her hand. If the funeral had been yesterday, I could not recollect it better. The very air of the best parlour when I went in at the door, the bright condition of the fire, the shining of the wine in the decanters, the patterns of the glasses and plates, the faint sweet smell of cake, the odour of Miss Murdstone's dress and our black clothes. Mr. Chipley is in the room and comes to speak to me. "And how is Master David?" he said kindly. I cannot tell him very well. I give him my hand, which he holds in his. "Dear me," says Mr. Chipley, meekly smiling, with something shining in his eye. "Our little friends grow up around us. They grow out of our knowledge, ma'am." This is to Miss Murdstone, who makes no reply. "There is a great improvement here, ma'am," said Mr. Chipley. Miss Murdstone merely answers with a frown and a formal bend. Mr. Chipley, discomfited, goes into a corner, keeping me with him, and opens his mouth no more. I remark this because I remark everything that happens, not because I care about myself or have done since I came home. And now the bell begins to sound, and Mr. Omer and another come to make us ready. As Pegotty was wont to tell me long ago, the followers of my father to the same grave were made ready in the same room. There are Mr. Murdstone, our neighbour Mr. Graper, Mr. Chipley, and I. When we go out to the door, the bearers and their load are in the garden, and they move before us down the path, and past the elms and through the gate, and into the churchyard, where I've often heard the birds sing on a summer morning. We stand around the grave. The day seems different to me from every other day, and the light not of the same colour, of a sadder colour. Now there is a solemn hush, which we have brought from home, and with what is resting in the mould, and while we stand bareheaded, I hear the voice of the clergyman sounding remote in the open air, and yet distinct and plain, saying, I am the resurrection and the life, said the Lord. Then I hear sobs, and standing apart among the lookers-on, I see that good and faithful servant, whom of all the people upon earth I love the best, and unto whom my childish heart is certain that the Lord will one day say, well done. There are many faces that I know among the little crowd, faces that I knew in church when mine was always wandering there, faces that first saw my mother when she came to the village in her youthful bloom. I do not mind them. I mind nothing but my grief. And yet I see and know them all, and even in the background, far away, see Minnie looking on, and her eye glancing on her sweetheart who is near me. It is over, and the earth is filled in, and we turn to come away. Before us stands our house, so pretty and unchanged, so linked in my mind with a young idea of what is gone, that all my sorrow has been nothing to the sorrow it calls forth. But they take me on, and Mr. Chipley talks to me, and when we get home puts some water to my lips, and when I ask his leave to go up to my room, dismisses me with the gentleness of a woman. All this, I say, is yesterday's events. Events of later date have floated from me to the shore where all forgotten things will reappear. But this stands like a high rock in the ocean. I knew that Peggoty would come to me in my room. The Sabbath stillness of the time. The day was so like Sunday. I have forgotten that. Was suited to us both. She sat down by my side upon my little bed, and holding my hand and sometimes putting it to her lips and sometimes smoothing it with hers as she might have comforted my little brother, told me, in her way, all that she had to tell concerning what had happened. She was never well, said Peggoty, for a long time. She was uncertain in her mind and not happy. When her baby was born, I thought at first she would get better, but she was more delicate and sunk a little every day. She used to sit alone before her baby came, and then she cried. But afterwards, she used to sing to it so soft that I once thought when I heard her, it was like a voice up in the air that was rising away. I think she got to be more timid and more frightened like of late, and that a hard word was like a blow to her. But she was always the same to me. She never changed to her foolish Peggoty, didn't my sweet girl. Here, Peggoty stopped and softly beat upon my hand a little while. The last time I saw her like her old self was the night when you came home, my dear. The day you went away, she said to me, I never shall see my pretty darling again. Something tells me so. That tells the truth, I know. She tried to hold up after that, and many a time, when they told her she was thoughtless and light-hearted, made believe to be so, but it was all a bygone then. She never told her husband what she had told me. She was afraid of saying it to anybody else, till one night, a little more than a week before it happened, when she said to Kim, "My dear, I think I'm dying." "It's off my mind now, Pegotty," she told me, when I laid her in her bed that night. "He will believe it more and more, poor fellow, every day for a few days to come, and then it will be past. I'm very tired. If this is sleep, sit by me while I sleep. Don't leave me. God bless both my children. God protect and keep my fatherless son." "I never left her afterwards," said Pegotty. "She often talked to them too downstairs, for she loved them. She couldn't bear not to love anyone who was about her. But when they went away from her bedside, she always turned to me, as if there was rest where Pegotty was, and never fell asleep in any other way. On the last night in the evening, she kissed me and said, 'If my baby should die too, Pegotty, please let them lay him in my arms and bury us together.' It was done, for the poor lamb lived but a day beyond her. 'Let my dearest boy go with us to our resting place,' she said, 'and tell him that his mother, when she lay here, blessed him not once, but 1,000 times.' Another silence followed this, and another gentle beating on my hand. 'It was pretty far in the night,' said Pegotty, 'when she asked me for some drink, and when she had taken it, gave me such a patient smile, the dear, so beautiful. Daybreak had come, and the sun was rising, when she said to me how kind and considerate Mr. Copperfield had always been to her, and how he had borne with her and told her when she doubted herself that a loving heart was better and stronger than wisdom, and that he was a happy man in hers. "Pegotty, my dear," she said then, "put me nearer to you," for she was very weak. "Lay your good arm underneath my neck," she said, "and turn me to you, for your face is going far off, and I want it to be near." I put it as she asked, and oh, Davy, the time had come when my first parting words to you were true, when she was glad to lay her poor head on her stupid, cross old Pegotty's arm, and she died like a child that had gone to sleep. Thus ended Pegotty's narration. From the moment of my knowing of the death of my mother, the idea of her as she had been of late had vanished from me. I remembered her from that instant only as the young mother of my earliest impressions, who had been used to wind her bright curls round and round her finger, and to dance with me at twilight in the parlour. What Pegotty had told me now was so far from bringing me back to the later period that it rooted the earlier image in my mind. It may be curious, but it's true. In her death, she winged her way back to her calm, untroubled youth, and cancelled all the rest. The mother who lay in the grave was the mother of my infancy. The little creature in her arms was myself, as I had once been, hushed forever in her bosom. The first act of business Miss Murdstone performed when the day of the solemnity was over, and light was freely admitted into the house, was to give Peggoty a month's warning. Much as Peggoty would have disliked such a service, I believe she would have retained it for my sake, in preference to the best upon earth. She told me we must part, and told me why, and we condoled with one another in all sincerity. As to me or my future, not a word was said or a step taken. Happy they would have been, I dare say, if they could have dismissed me at a month's warning too. I mustered courage once to ask Miss Murdstone when I was going back to school, and she answered dryly. She believed I was not going back at all. I was told nothing more. I was very anxious to know what was going to be done with me, and so was Peggoty. But neither she nor I could pick up any information on the subject. There was one change in my condition which, while it relieved me of a great deal of present uneasiness, might have made me, if I had been capable of considering it closely, yet more uncomfortable about the future. It was this: the constraint that had been put upon me was quite abandoned. I was so far from being required to keep my dull post in the parlour that on several occasions when I took my seat there, Miss Murdstone frowned to me to go away. I was so far from being warned off from Peggoty's society that, provided I was not in Mr. Murdstone, I was never sought out or inquired for. At first, I was in daily dread of his taking my education in hand again, or of Miss Murdstone's devoting herself to it. But I soon began to think that such fears were groundless, and that all I had to anticipate was neglect. I do not conceive that this discovery gave me much pain then. I was still giddy with the shock of my mother's death, and in a kind of stunned state as to all tributary things. I can recollect, indeed, to have speculated at odd times on the possibility of my not being taught any more, or cared for any more, and growing up to be a shabby, moody man, lounging an idle life away about the village, as well as on the feasibility of my getting rid of this picture by going away somewhere, like the hero in a story, to seek my fortune. But these were transient visions, daydreams I sat looking at sometimes, as if they were faintly painted or written on the wall of my room, and which, as they melted away, left the wall blank again. Peggoty, I said in a thoughtful whisper one evening, when I was warming my hands at the kitchen fire, Mr. Murdstone likes me less than he used to. He never liked me much, Peggoty, but he would rather not even see me now, if he can help it. Perhaps it's his sorrow, said Peggoty, stroking my hair. I'm sure, Peggoty, I'm sorry too. If I believed it was his sorrow, I should not think of it at all. But it's not that. Oh no, it's not that. How do you know it's not that? Said Peggoty after a silence. Oh, his sorrow is another and quite a different thing. He's sorry at this moment, sitting by the fireside with Miss Murdstone, but if I was to go in, Pegotty, he would be something besides. What would he be, Pegotty? Said Pegotty. Angry, I answered, with an involuntary imitation of his dark frown. If he was only sorry, he wouldn't look at me as he does. I am only sorry that it makes me feel kinder. Pegotty said nothing for a little while, and I warmed my hands as silent as she. Davy, she said at length. Yes, Pegotty? I've tried, my dear, all ways I could think of, all the ways there are, and all the ways there aren't, in short, to get a suitable service here in Bloodstone. But there's no such a thing, my love. And what do you mean to do, Pegotty? Says I, wistfully. Do you mean to go and seek your fortune? I expect I shall be forced to go to Yarmouth, replied Pegotty, and live there. You might have gone farther off, I said, brightening a little, and being as bad as lost. I shall see you sometimes, my dear old Pegotty there. You won't be quite at the other end of the world, will you? Contrary ways, please God, cried Pegotty with great animation. As long as you are here, my pet, I shall come over every week of my life to see you. One day, every week of my life. I felt a great weight taken off my mind by this promise. But even this was not all, for Pegotty went on to say, I'm a-going, Davy, you see, to my brother's first, for another fortnight's visit, just till I have had time to look about me and get to be something like myself again. Now, I have been thinking that perhaps as they don't want you here at present, you might be let to go along with me. If anything short of being in a different relation to everyone about me, Pegotty accepted, could have given me a sense of pleasure at that time, it would have been this project of all others. The idea of being again surrounded by those honest faces, shining welcome on me, of renewing the peacefulness of the sweet Sunday morning, when the bells were ringing, the stones dropping in the water, and the shadowy ships breaking through the mist, of roaming up and down with little Emily, telling her my troubles and finding charms against them in the shells and pebbles on the beach, made a calm in my heart. It was ruffled next moment, to be sure, by a doubt of Miss Murdstone's giving her consent, but even that was set to rest soon, for she came out to take an evening grope in the store closet while we were yet in conversation. And Pegotty, with a boldness that amazed me, broached the topic on the spot. The boy will be idle there, said Miss Murdstone, looking into a pickle jar. And idleness is the root of all evil. But to be sure, he would be idle here, or anywhere, in my opinion. Pegotty had an angry answer ready, I could see, but she swallowed it for my sake and remained silent. Said Miss Murdstone, still keeping her eye on the pickles. It is of some more importance than anything else. It is of paramount importance that my brother should not be disturbed or made uncomfortable. I suppose I had better say yes. I thanked her, without making any demonstration of joy, lest it should induce her to withdraw her assent. Nor could I help thinking this a prudent course, since she looked at me out of the pickle jar with as great an access of sourness as if her black eyes had absorbed its contents. However, the permission was given, and was never retracted. For when the month was out, Pegotty and I were ready to depart. Join me, Morel Benard. Join me for the next episode of the story of David Copperfield. Look out for the next video, the next episode. I'll be here. I'll see you soon. Look out for the next episode, next video. See you then. Take care. Bye.